My listeners, today I, Alexa, will tell you the story of the night when my life was broken by words sharper than any knife, words that carried lies, words that carried venom, words that turned me from a woman of dignity into a woman branded guilty in the eyes of the people around me. Even though my heart was pure and my conscience clean, I still remember it clearly. It was a quiet evening. The sky had turned golden with the setting sun, and I had just finished preparing food for my family. I was humming softly, thinking about the ordinary things of life, when suddenly the calmness was shattered by the sound of harsh knocking at my door. I opened it and saw neighbors gathered, their faces hard, their eyes burning with suspicion. And before I could even ask what had happened, one of them spat out words that pierced me like arrows. "Alexa, we know the truth about you. You are not who you pretend to be. You are shameless, you are sinful, you are guilty of things a woman should never even think of." I stood frozen, my tongue heavy, my heart pounding, because I had done nothing but live my life in patience and honesty. Yet here I was, accused without proof, condemned without trial. And as their voices grew louder, their words grew uglier, I felt my soul sink deeper and deeper into darkness. I tried to speak. I tried to defend myself, to say, "No, you are wrong. I am innocent." But their ears were closed. They had already made up their minds. In their eyes, truth no longer mattered. Only gossip, only rumors, only poison carried from one tongue to another. And in that moment, I realized how fragile a woman's dignity can be, how quickly it can be torn apart by a society that does not care to search for truth. That night, whispers spread through the streets like wildfire. Every house became a courtroom, every neighbor became a judge, and I, Alexa, was sentenced without ever being given a chance to speak. I could hear their voices outside my door, saying, "She is guilty, she has shamed us all, she deserves no respect, she deserves no place among us." And I pressed my hands against my ears, trying not to listen. But words have a way of seeping into your bones, and I felt myself shrinking, drowning in humiliation. When my own relatives heard the gossip, instead of standing by me, they turned cold. Their eyes avoided mine, and some even repeated the accusations as if they believed them. And that betrayal hurt me more than the words of strangers, because when your own blood doubts you, where do you run? Who do you hold on to? I sat in the darkness of my room that night, staring at the walls, feeling as if the air around me was pressing down on my chest. And I whispered to myself, why? What did I do to deserve this? Why is my name being dragged through the mud when I have done no wrong? But the silence gave me no answers, only the echo of my own sobs. As the days passed, the whispers turned into open insults. Women who once greeted me with smiles now turned their backs. Men who once respected me now spoke my name with disdain. Children who once ran to me with laughter were pulled away by their mothers as if I carried a disease. And I began to feel like a shadow, unwanted, untouchable, cursed. I still tried to walk with dignity, to hold my head high, but every step I took in the streets felt heavy, because I could feel their eyes piercing my back, their words stabbing into my soul. And though I wanted to scream the truth, though I wanted to stand in the center of the village and cry out, "I am innocent, I swear by God I am innocent," I knew it would be useless, because once society decides a woman is guilty, her truth becomes invisible, her voice becomes worthless, and her silence becomes her only companion. My children, the fall into darkness does not always come from losing wealth or losing a house. Sometimes it comes from losing your name, your honor, your reputation. Because when society stains it with lies, it feels as though your very skin has been torn away, leaving you naked under the cruel eyes of people who thrive on your suffering. That was the beginning of my story, the night my life was no longer mine. The night I became a prisoner of other people's tongues, and the night I realized that sometimes your greatest sin is simply being too silent, too patient, too trusting of those who never deserved your trust. My children, when a woman is called guilty by society, her life does not end that day. No, it continues, but it becomes a different kind of life, a half-life, a shadowed existence where every step is heavy, every breath is sharp, and every glance from others feels like a stone thrown at her. I began to live not as Alexa the daughter, Alexa the wife, Alexa the neighbor, but as Alexa the condemned, the accused, the unwanted. I had been stripped of my name and clothed with shame that did not belong to me, and that shame clung to me like a second skin I could not peel away. Everywhere I went, I could feel it following me. When I walked to the market, the women would whisper. When I fetched water from the well, the children would stare. When I passed through the street, the men would smirk and mutter. And I wanted to vanish, to melt into the earth, because I was still the same Alexa inside, innocent, pure of conscience. But their eyes had turned me into something else, something filthy, something despised. And in their eyes, I saw the reflection of a woman I did not even recognize. Even my own family changed. My cousins, my sisters, my uncles, the ones who should have shielded me from the cruelty of tongues, they too grew distant. One by one, they stopped visiting. They stopped asking about me. And when they did speak to me, there was always suspicion in their voices, a hidden question in their eyes, as if they too believed the rumors, but were too polite to say it out loud. And that betrayal was a knife twisting inside me, because if your own blood doubts you, then what protection is left? I remember one evening going to my mother's house, hoping for comfort, but when I entered, she looked at me with tears in her eyes and said, "Alexa, I raised you with dignity. Why are they saying such things about you? Tell me it is not true." And though I swore on my life that I was innocent, I could see in her face that doubt had already planted its poison, and I left her house that night feeling more orphaned than if I had no parents at all. Food lost its taste, sleep lost its comfort, and the world lost its colors. I lived as if I was moving through a dream, but it was a nightmare I could not wake from. People stopped giving me work, because who would want clothes stitched by a guilty woman? Who would want food cooked by a woman accused of sin? I became not only dishonored, but also hungry. I would sit in my small room at night, the emptiness of my stomach matching the emptiness of my heart, and I would whisper to God, "Ya Allah, you know the truth. You see what they do not. Why do you let them crush me? Why do you let them destroy my name?" And though I begged for an answer, the only reply was silence. Silence so deep it felt like the walls themselves were judging me too. Days turned into weeks, and the isolation grew heavier. There is a pain that comes from being beaten. There is a pain that comes from hunger. But there is no pain like the pain of being innocent, and yet being treated like the vilest sinner. It eats you alive from the inside. It makes you question your own worth. It makes you wonder, am I truly what they say? Am I truly guilty? And though I knew in my heart I had done nothing, the weight of their voices made me feel dirty, as if I was carrying a stain I could never wash away. And so I began to avoid the world, to hide from their eyes, to shrink into corners where no one could see me, because in their eyes I had already been erased as a human being. I had become only the rumors they repeated. My children, when society takes away your name, your honor, and your place, you have only two choices left. Either you let yourself wither and die like a flower trampled into the dust, or you stand quietly, silently, and begin to grow again from the cracks where no one expects you to. I chose the second, not because I was brave, but because survival left me no other path. My days had become shadows of hunger and whispers. My nights had become oceans of tears. But one morning, as I looked into the small mirror in my room, I saw my own eyes staring back at me, hollow, broken, and I whispered to myself, "Alexa, they have taken everything, but they cannot take the truth inside you. And if you let them crush you completely, then you are giving them victory. So stand, even if your legs tremble, Even if your heart bleeds, stand. And so I began my silent battle. I searched for ways to live, for work that no one else wanted, because no one wanted to hire the woman called guilty. I picked up sewing needles and thread that were almost too old to use. I began to stitch torn clothes for children. At first, the women looked at me with suspicion. Some laughed. Some said, "How can we let her hands touch our clothes when her name is dirty?" But hunger does not let you wait for respect. Hunger makes you move even in humiliation. And so I stitched for those who would give me the chance. I worked late into the nights under the dim light of a lantern, my fingers bleeding from the needle, my eyes burning from tears. But I kept going, because each small coin I earned was proof that I was still alive, that I could still stand without begging. I began to wash dishes in houses where once I had been welcomed as a guest. I carried water for families who whispered about me behind my back. I swept floors that others thought were too lowly for their daughters. And with every insult, with every smirk, I swallowed my pride, because I had no choice. But deep inside, I told myself, "Alexa, this work does not shame you. The shame belongs to those who believe lies. The shame belongs to those who judge without truth. You are not guilty. You are strong." And that thought kept me breathing. Over time, something unexpected happened. The little girls of the village, the ones who used to stare at me with confusion, began to sit with me as I stitched, their small eyes filled with curiosity. And one of them asked, "Daddy Alexa, can you teach us how to sew?" Her innocent voice melted my heart, and I smiled for the first time in what felt like years. I showed her how to hold the needle, how to push the thread through cloth, and soon more girls began to gather. They brought little scraps of fabric, and together we stitched. And as I taught them, I felt my own spirit being stitched back together, because in their eyes there was no judgment, no gossip, only learning, only trust. And for the first time since my fall into darkness, I felt like I still had something to give. Society still whispered. They still said, "Look at Alexa, the guilty woman teaching children." But I no longer let their words burn me. I had learned that silence can be a shield. I did not argue. I did not defend myself. I simply worked. I simply taught. I simply endured. And slowly, very slowly, people began to see that I was not broken, that I had not disappeared, that I still stood. And though they did not admit it, I saw in their eyes a flicker of respect, a flicker that comes when someone survives what should have destroyed them. But do not think my battle was easy. No, my children, it was long and bitter. There were nights when I collapsed on the floor of my room, my body aching, my soul screaming, asking God, why must I carry this punishment for a crime I never committed? And sometimes the silence was so heavy, it felt like He too had abandoned me. But deep in my heart, I knew He was listening, even if He was silent. And that belief was my anchor, my only anchor in a sea of cruelty. I clung to prayer, to whispered duas, to the quiet hope that one day truth would shine, even if not in this world, then in the next. As the years moved, I realized something powerful. Pain can crush you, but it can also carve you into someone you never thought you could be. I had lost everything: family, respect, comfort. But in return, I had gained a strength I never knew I carried, a patience that became my weapon, a dignity that could not be stolen no matter how many lies were thrown at me. And that was my silent battle, not to win against society, but to win against despair. Not to prove them wrong, but to prove to myself that I could still live, still breathe, still rise. And that battle, my children, was harder than any war fought with swords, but it was also the most victorious.
My children, every story has an end, though life itself does not end so neatly, and mine is no different. I did not wake up one day to find society suddenly believing me. I did not receive an apology from the tongues that tore me apart. No one came with garlands and asked forgiveness for the pain they had thrown upon my shoulders. No, life does not work like that. Wounds do not close with grand gestures. They close slowly, quietly, like a flower that blooms even though no one is watching. My ending was not a thunder of justice. It was the gentle whisper of truth within my own heart, a truth that could not be destroyed, a truth that only God and I shared. Years passed, and the world that once spat my name began to grow tired of whispering it. Gossip is like fire. It burns hot, but if you refuse to feed it, it dies. And so, with time, their voices grew softer, their eyes less sharp, until one day I realized I could walk through the market and no one turned their head anymore. They had found other stories, other victims, and I was no longer the entertainment of their cruelty. But the scars they left on me remained, the lessons they carved into me remained, and in those scars I discovered a strength that no storm could erase. I had become not just Alexa, but Alexa who endured, Alexa who survived, Alexa who did not break even when the world tried to shatter her. The children I once taught sewing grew older. Some became mothers themselves, and when they looked at me, they no longer saw the guilty woman. They saw a teacher, a grandmother figure, someone who had given them skill with her hands and strength with her silence. And in their eyes, I found the acceptance that society had stolen from me. In their respect, I found a dignity I thought I had lost forever. And though it was not the same as justice, it was enough to heal parts of me that had remained raw for years. One day, many years after my shame had been declared, I sat under the old neem tree at the edge of the village, my hair now white, my back bent, and a young man approached me. He was the son of one of those who had once mocked me. He lowered his head and said, "Granny Alexa, my mother told me what they said about you. She told me the truth came out years later, that you were innocent, that the blame was false. And I want to say I am sorry." His words cut through me like sunlight breaking through clouds, because though they had never spoken it before, the truth had been revealed in whispers I had not heard. God had shown it, time had uncovered it, and even if it was late, even if it came after years of pain, still it came. And in that moment, I felt a strange peace, as if God himself was reminding me, "Alexa, I never forgot you. I was only waiting for the right time." But my children, do not think my heart danced with joy at that moment. No, it ached. Because what use was their acceptance now, after years of hunger, tears, and loneliness? What use was the truth when my youth had been spent under the weight of lies? But then I realized something greater. The truth was never for them. It was always for me. I did not need society to free me. I had already freed myself. By refusing to bow down to despair, by refusing to become the woman they accused me of being, I had carried my truth like a secret jewel in my chest, and no one, not the cruelest gossip, not the harshest judgment, could steal it from me. In that, I had already won. As I sit here now, telling you my story, my eyes may still fill with tears, my voice may still tremble with the memory of pain, but my heart is steady, because I know I was innocent, because I know God saw what man refused to see, because I know He will weigh my tears against their words, and His scales are never unjust. So even if the world never gave me justice, I know my Lord will, and that is enough for me, more than enough. So my children, remember this lesson from my life. Society can be cruel. It can call you guilty when you are not. It can spit upon your name. It can throw you into the streets. It can leave you to starve. But society is not God. Society's eyes are blind. Its tongue is sharp, but its memory is weak. One day it forgets. One day it moves on. But God, He never forgets. He sees the truth that even you sometimes forget, and He carries it for you. He keeps it safe until the day comes when it will be revealed. So hold on to your truth, even if the world calls you a liar. Hold on to your dignity, even if they strip you of respect. Hold on to your faith, even if silence is the only reply you hear. Because in the end, truth is not proved by voices. Truth is proved by time and by God. And so this is the end of my story, my children. I was Alexa, the woman society called guilty, but only God knew the truth. I lived through their lies, I carried my wounds, I fought my silent battle, and I stand before you not as a victim, but as a survivor. I have nothing more to prove, nothing more to explain, because I am not what they called me. I am what I endured, and that, my children, is the truth they can never erase.